Salve Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. And you will find rest for yourselves, for my yoke is easy and my burden light." The Gospel of the Lord. A yoke is a harness for two farm animals to work together so that the burden doesn't fall on one, but they work as a team, as a pair, twinned, if you want to use that image. It's made to ease the load. However, if we're yoked to something which is not of Christ, we're lowering our self-image to that of a mere beast of burden. Is it any wonder then that Pharaoh would see you as a mere beast of burden, because he wants to use you? And when I speak of Pharaoh from the Old Testament, I speak of the world and all the things that seek to simply use the human person for its own ends. So we become equal to a beast. So, a friend of mine who's in banking said, the greatest form of enslavement today is credit. We're beasts of burden that are driving an economic structure that's based on debt that compels us to be under the burden of somebody else, a type of slavery. It's really a stark image of the world and how it desires to use us instead of raising us up. Is it any wonder that it doesn't take very long for us to begin to see ourselves according to that image of a beast of burden? And so we live in a social structure that sees the human person as, in some ways, equal to a mere animal, and in many ways, even less than. It seems like the human person is less protected than our domestic pets, especially when we look at the whole business of abortion. Jesus is calling us to be yoked with him. And maybe if there's anything that we've allowed to yoke us, that we have allowed to be attached to us, that we have allowed to sort of be around our neck, perhaps it's causing a burden. It needs to be cast off. Perhaps the most obvious example could be any types of addiction or any unhealthy relationships, but there could be a list that's even larger that may somehow affect one of us here. And so we look and see, is what's yoking me of Christ? Because anything that is not of Christ lowers me to the vision of an animal, a mere beast of burden. And yet we see in the proclamation to Moses in the Old Testament that God declares himself as Father to Moses. Not only that, he declares himself to Moses as, I'm what's necessary for you. one way to define that could be that I am what's necessary for you. You can't live without me, and I want to live with you. And so he endears himself to us. And so now Jesus invites us this morning, come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will refresh you.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit,